not making
Did he send out a fundraising email? Yes or no?
Hold on a second.
Lying.
We just played
I'm not
for.
lying.
You were.
He sent out a fundraising email at 6 o'clock.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. We just played for people at home exactly what the video says.
Yeah,
Ben.
I've watched
You
it.
cannot sit here and lie about that same video. That doesn't work.
So
the
you're
video
telling me-
did not say that they should defy the orders of the president. It said that you cannot follow illegal orders. That's in the military code of justice.
In today's video, Abby Phillip unleashes on Ben Ferguson on NewsNight with Abby Phillip as a tense CNN panel debate spirals out of control. With Paul Rieckhoff and Tim Parrish stepping in, Abby Phillip aggressively challenges Ben Ferguson over reckless political rhetoric, military accountability, and the real-world consequences of escalating language. As Ferguson struggles to defend the narrative, the conversation exposes just how dangerous this moment has become. So let's dive in and watch how Abby Phillip shuts down Ben Ferguson on NewsNight with Abby Phillip.
It's pretty crystal clear, Paul Rieckhoff. She's saying they're advocating for members of the military to refuse legal orders, and the video clearly states otherwise. Why do you think that this really kind of got underneath the skin of the president and the White House?
I don't know, but it's unacceptable. And I think it's a time for everybody, no matter what your political background is, to call it what it is. I mean, the president of the United States is calling for the execution of members of Congress. It is dangerous, it is unprecedented, it is bad for our national security, it is divisive, and it's amplifying what is already a very dangerous environment across this country. We've all talked around this table and other places about the need to bring down the temperature because of the threat level to everybody in this country. He just turned it up to 100, and these folks are now in immediate danger. So is everyone else around them, so is everyone in Congress. And I think it's a day that has our enemies celebrating. Our children are watching, and I think this is of the utmost seriousness. And it's a time for people to put their political differences aside and call it for what it is.
Tim?
I actually think, and Paul, I agree with you, we've got to bring down the temperature, but I do think it's interesting. The president did not call for anyone to be hanged or be executed. You're talking about a person, and I find the irony in this, who had an assassination attempt against his life, who we saw conservatives get assassinated with Charlie Kirk. And so the president would never call for this to actually happen. This is political theater is what it is. And you talk about our enemies around the world and what they see. What they've actually seen is members of Congress tell members of the military to defy the orders of the commander-in-chief.
That's
what our enemies actually
People
saw.
can see it
and
for
so the
themselves.
president didn't call for that. You can't show one of these tweets where the president called for that.
Actually, Tim, hold on.
That's a misrepresentation.
That part I'm going to stop you on because we did just, in fact, show the tweets where he did do that. He not only called it, seditious conspiracy, but
that's what he called it.
Amplified a tweet that said that they should be punished by hanging. He did that.
The president of the United States did not call for members of Congress.
Okay, but he called them traitors. Let's say that you agree he called them
I
traitors.
guess in your world,
he called them traitors.
But why? But hold on, but Tim, why would he amplify a message saying that those members should be punished with hanging? Why?
What the president's tweet said, he simply called it a seditious act.
But you're not answering. You're not answering my.
Members of Congress.
Tim, you're not answering my question. Why would he amplify that message? Why would the president of the United States?
Why would members of Congress
do that?
Where they have an all-time low rating on the American people having confidence
I'm going to
in
ask
members
you
of
again.
Congress.
Why would the president of the United States amplify a message that says explicitly that they should be punished by hanging?
The president, and I'm going to say again, Abby, the president of the United States did not call for any members of Congress to be hanged.
He absolutely did. That's like calling for it in today's world.
Without getting lost in the sauce here, he is amplifying threats to members of Congress. However you cut it, if you're explaining, you're losing. And I think everybody who's objective here can see what this was. It's not good for our country.
Isn't this the very same thing?
What really stands out in this debate is how Paul Rieckhoff and Abby Phillip are grounding their concern in reality, not theatrics. There's a long-standing principle in U.S. military law that service members are required to refuse unlawful orders. That's not partisan messaging. It's baked directly into the Uniform Code of Military Justice and reinforced by decades of training after abuses like My Lai and Abu Ghraib. Multiple Pentagon manuals explicitly explicitly state that "I was just following orders" is not a legal defense. So framing reminders of that obligation as encouraging mutiny is a stretch that collapses under even basic scrutiny. Where Tim Parrish's argument really falls apart is minimizing the impact of presidential rhetoric. Research from institutions like the Secret Service and DHS consistently shows that violent language from high-profile leaders increases real-world threats, especially toward public officials. Members of Congress already face historically high levels of death threats. Capitol Police investigations have increased several-fold over the past decade. When a president amplifies language associated with execution or treason, even indirectly, it doesn't land in a vacuum. It lands in a country already on edge. From a national security standpoint, this kind of escalation is counterproductive. Former defense officials across administrations, Republican and Democratic, have warned that politicizing the military undermines civilian control, not by reminding troops of the law, but by suggesting loyalty should override legality. That's exactly what authoritarian systems rely on, and it's why US doctrine has always emphasized constitutional duty over any individual leader. Rieckhoff and Phillip aren't arguing about tone for tone's sake. They're pointing out that words from the top shape behavior, threats, and trust. And once that line is crossed, the damage doesn't stay theoretical.
That a few months ago, Republicans were saying Democrats were doing, except that now the president's doing it and it's okay?
I go back to the video. Like, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it wasn't for a ridiculous video that was put out by Democrats telling people in uniform to defy the President of the United States of America.
But that's not what they said.
That's a fact.
What they said.
I was real quiet for a long time. That was like a long time for me. So let me say point two here.
We just laid out that the video says you should not follow illegal orders. Do you think that members of the military should follow illegal orders?
I think it's pretty clear that this was an obvious video that was put out without any issue around it, saying if you don't like what the president's doing,
that's literally
you don't
not what
have
it
to.
said.
It's literally not what it said at all.
I go back to what Mark said. I go back to what Mark said on this channel. By the way, after he sent out a fundraising email, which is the reason why this is a total ball of crap to start with. This was a fight they wanted with the president. He's sending out fundraising emails tonight while claiming, "Oh my gosh, I'm afraid of my life. Please send me money for re-election." If this is such a terrible moment in political history, you don't send out fundraising emails saying, "Please send me money," after I said to people in military uniform, defy the orders of the President of the United States of America. That's what he said in his email.
No, it is not.
Did you look at the email tonight?
Yes, I did. You're not telling the truth about the video.
He said, "Give me money tonight," while saying, "I'm afraid for my life."
Because the president attacked him. And also, Donald
No, he attacked the President of the United States of America by telling people in the military to not obey the President of the United States of America.
I know you want to make 1 plus 1 equals 7.
The more you say it, does not make it. Can I say something about the video? The more you say it, it does not make it.
Did he send out a fundraising email? Yes or no?
Hold on a second. We just played
for. You were.
He sent out a fundraising email at 6 o'clock.
Hold on a second. We just played for people at home exactly what the video says.
Yeah, I've watched it.
You cannot sit here and lie about that same video. That doesn't work.
So
the video did not say that they should defy the orders of the president. It said that you cannot follow illegal orders. That's in the military code of justice.
Can I say something? An example of one thing
Actually, the U.S. military's chief lawyer is actually making the case that bombing the Venezuelans could be illegal. There's actual things happening right now.
Can I address the video?
Some E3 that is sitting on a post is not going to defy. The service members are not dumb. Every time they take their oath, they know that they are supposed to obey the orders of those appointed over them. They don't need members of Congress to go on TV in a political discussion.
The video itself.
You don't have to.
Just 1 second.
The video itself, in my view, was unnecessary.
Right.
Okay, you could even argue it was imprecise. Hold on, let me finish. It was sloppy. I don't think you need to tell members of the military that they have an obligation to resist an illegal order. They already know that.
Right.
But by putting out that video does not warrant a response from the president, calling you a traitor and calling for your execution.
Okay.
What Abby Phillip and Paul Rieckhoff are pushing back on here isn't partisan outrage, it's the real-world impact of power, language, and precedent. The idea that reminding service members to refuse illegal orders somehow equals encouraging rebellion ignores decades of military doctrine. Since the Nuremberg trials, US forces have been explicitly trained that unlawful orders must be disobeyed. That principle is reinforced in the UCMJ, the Law of Armed Conflict Manuals, and regular ethics briefings. This isn't controversial inside the military, it's foundational. Where Ben Ferguson's argument really breaks down is treating presidential amplification as harmless. Studies from the Department of Homeland Security and the US Capitol Police show that threats against lawmakers spike following inflammatory political rhetoric, especially when it frames opponents as traitors. Capitol Police investigations into threats have risen dramatically over the last several years, and experts consistently warn that normalization of violent language increases copycat behavior even when leaders claim they were being rhetorical. The fundraising angle also misses the bigger picture. Members of Congress routinely raise funds during crises, including after assassination attempts, threats, or security incidents, because campaigns don't stop when danger appears. That doesn't negate the seriousness of the threat environment. What does escalate risk is a president publicly labeling lawmakers as enemies or amplifying messages tied to execution, whether directly authored or not. From a national security lens, former Pentagon leaders from both parties have warned that politicizing obedience undermines civilian control of the military. Civilian control depends on legality, not loyalty to one person. Abby Phillip and Paul Rieckhoff are pointing to that line being blurred, and history shows once that happens, the consequences aren't theoretical, they're destabilizing.
This video
that is the difference here. That is the
this
difference
video
here.
would not have been necessary
If you weren't trying
the
to make money
president
off of it.
hadn't
Just a second.
completely replaced senior military leadership and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the people that we could look up for. It wouldn't be necessary if he hadn't gone in at the beginning of his service and fired so many JAG attorneys that tell you if something is illegal or an illegal, a legal or
But Lee,
illegal
every
order.
president does
It
that.
wouldn't
Every
be
president
necessary
doesn't
if the
do that.
president hadn't
Hold on a
fired
second.
inspectors general, who are the police of the military, or if he hadn't called every single high military commander in to tell them that their biggest enemy was going to be domestic and at home, and that if they didn't like it, they could quit. The reason they did this video was to remind younger soldiers who might not have someone in command
Or raise money.
that they are not responsible to follow illegal orders. The U.S. law actually
know they don't
requires
need to do that.
military members to
They already know
disobey
that.
unlawful.
So, Lee,
no,
with
they
that-
do not necessarily know that. And the
Whoa,
thing
yes,
is,
they do.
absolutely. Whoa,
Hold on.
Lee, you can't insult.
military.
I
You
am
cannot
not
insult
can I
members
just
of
say-
the
I'm literally in between all of this.
Hold on, guys. We're all talking.
Absolutely.
Hold on, guys.
Thanks,
Hold on,
Thanks,
hold on, guys.
Thanks,
You're all
Thanks,
talking at the same time. Let's all stop talking.
Abby's in charge.
Let's all
Pause.
just stop
Abby's
talking
in charge.
for 1 second, okay?
This
let's stop talking for 1
response-
second, including you, Lee. Just a second, okay? We take your point. Tim, you're saying it does not need to be said.
Well, what I'm saying is I can't
However-
let my colleagues sit here and say members of the military are too stupid to understand
I
that they
cannot
don't
say
need
that,
to
sir. That's
obey
ridiculous.
the orders of the members of the military know this. It's in their oath every time they get promoted.
If
Give me
I
an
am
example of
18-year-old,
one.
if
Give
I'm an
me an example.
18-year-old soldier and my president, who I have had in my life since I was 9 years old, tells me to shoot a protester, which this president did do in his first term, and Mark Esper said, no, we cannot do that, sir. If I'm an 18-year-old soldier and my president tells me to do that, they are saying, as former military, as people who have also made an oath to the Constitution, an oath to this country, who are now sitting members of Congress, we are reminding you that you do not have to obey, and it's on the screen, this big, bigger than their head, an illegal order.
That's a very dangerous precedent to set.
Can I just-
You
We're
can't
going
give
to
me one
hit
example
pause on
of
this
that, of where
conversation
that's
and continue
happened.
it when we come back at the end of the next break.
What Lee McGowan is pushing up against, and where Tim Parrish's argument falls apart, is the assumption that military knowledge exists in a vacuum, untouched by politics or pressure from the top. In reality, the US military relies heavily on guardrails, inspectors general, JAG officers, and senior leadership to reinforce what is lawful in moments of chaos. When those guardrails are weakened or removed, confusion isn't hypothetical, it's documented. History backs this up. After Vietnam, the US overhauled its training precisely because young, lower-ranking soldiers did follow unlawful orders under pressure. That's why modern doctrine emphasizes refusal of illegal commands, not blind obedience. And while seasoned officers may understand that instinctively, junior enlisted members, especially 18 and 19-year-olds in their first deployment, often defer to authority figures without the confidence or legal clarity to push back. There's also precedent for concern when political leaders frame domestic dissent as an enemy. Former Defense Secretary Mark Esper confirmed that proposals to use active duty troops against protesters were seriously discussed during Trump's first term. That alone explains why reminders matter, not because troops are ignorant, but because pressure changes behavior, and military psychology studies show compliance rises when orders come from the highest authority. Calling such reminders political theater ignores the broader context. This wasn't a campaign stunt. It was a response to an environment where institutional safeguards were eroded and rhetoric escalated. And that's the key point Lee McGowan is implicitly defending. Reinforcing constitutional duty is stabilizing, not subversive. What is destabilizing is equating constitutional reminders with disloyalty, especially when history shows that the greatest military failures happen not when orders are questioned, but when they aren't. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.